3, 2, 1.
Some animals give me boners!
Happy New Year, it's 2025. Hope everyone had a Merry Christmas or a Merry whatever you celebrate or don't celebrate at the end of the year. I watched some great stuff this month and some, not so great stuff. So let's get into it. I Love You Man. This is like a romantic comedy, Paul Rudd and Jason Segel, where it's kind of like the ultimate romantic comedy, where it has all the beats of a romantic comedy with the meet cute and the falling in love and then the falling out and then the coming back together and declaring their love to each other. It has all that stuff, but it's just two platonic friends. And it's kind of beautiful, they have great chemistry and they're really funny in it, and there's so many funny moments in it, but it has this sweet underlying, story about friendship and platonic male love. The holiday, getting into the Christmas spirit, and I haven't seen this movie in years, but I was on a Nancy Meyers kick because I'd watched What Women Want a few weeks ago and really enjoyed that, really enjoyed revisiting that, so I thought, when I revisit one of her other classics, and this one's delightful, Jude Law, Cameron Diaz and Kate Winslet are on opposite sides of the Atlantic and they swap houses for Christmas, and Kate Winslet falls in love with one of Cameron Diaz's kind of colleagues played by Jack Black, and Cameron Diaz falls in love with Kate Winslet's brother played by Jude Law, and so you have these kind of dual parallel love stories going on, and it's another really sweet movie, very funny, but also very emotional, and it starts off. They've both had their hearts broken and they kind of want to change of scenery, and they're feeling lonely over Christmas, and they have these whirlwind romances that kind of like pick up their spirits again in time for Christmas. It's a really wonderful movie. Paul was kind of like a mythic thing when I was a kid. When it came out, we were like 12, 13, and we were just not old enough to get in to watch a 15 rated film at the cinema, but we were all obsessed with Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz. And it was amazing that Simon Pegg and Nick Frost had made this new film where they encounter an alien in the American desert and they go on a road trip with him. We had to wait till it came out on DVD and go and rent it. And it's so funny. It's so great. It's maybe not quite as airtight as Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, but it's a really, really fun movie. An amazing cast as well. Like Jason Bateman plays the like federal agent on their tail, Lorenzo Zoil, great character name, and Sigourney Weaver is his boss, and Joe Latruglio and Bill Hader are like Jason Bateman's bumbling cohorts. And Kristen Wiig is Simon Pegg's love interest. Jane Lynch is a waitress at a diner they go to. David Koechner and Jesse Plemons are these two rednecks they run into at the diner who kind of chase them across the desert. And Blythe Danner as she was a little girl when Paul landed. Now she's the kooky, crazy old lady who tells stories about an alien visitor. Oh, and obviously Seth Rogen as Paul, as the voice of Paul. Just a stacked cast. I feel like, because Shaun and Hot Fuzz have been such huge hits internationally, I feel like everyone's like, we got to work with these guys. No one's going to say no to working with those guys. But it's so much fun, and they crammed in every sci-fi reference they possibly could. Like, they go to the mountain from Close Encounters, and Jason Bateman's driving. He's talking on his hands-free to Sigourney Weaver, and he shoots the console and says, "Boring conversation anyway." They have just every classic sci-fi film. There's a reference to it somewhere in Paul. I love it. I think it's great. The Intern is continuing on my Nancy Meyers kick, and this was a more recent film of hers I hadn't seen, where Robert De Niro plays this old widower who he doesn't want to keep bothering his kids and his grandkids, and but he's lonely and he's bored, he's retired, his wife's dead, and so he gets this job as an intern working for Anne Hathaway. She's like a fashion mogul, and all his fellow interns are like kids essentially, but he's like 80 years old. And it kind of just becomes this, he's not just like her assistant who gets her a coffee and drives her around and stuff. He also is like looking out for her. Like, he notices that her husband is unfaithful, and he's like, you need to do something about that. Like, he provides emotional support. He's not just there to make copies. And he's really sweet in it. Obviously, he is so great at playing like the unscrupulous tough guys and just angry, evil characters. But he just was great at playing a softie, a sweetheart. And he doesn't get the chance to do it that often. Star Wars Skeleton Crew. There's a new Star Wars show on Disney Plus, and I'm fucking loving it. I think this is fantastic. I think this is the most fun a Star Wars show has been since like the early Mandalorians. It's like Star Wars Goonies. It's like a bunch of kids off on a crazy adventure across the galaxy. And all the kids are so lovable, like Wim and Neil and Fern I think the young actor's name is Ryan Kira Armstrong. She was in Firestarter. She was the Drew Barrymore role in the remake of Firestarter. And that's a film I absolutely hated, and it's the closest I've ever come to walking out of a cinema because it was so awful. But I stayed because she was great in it. She was fantastic. And it's good to see her in something that's like worthy of her talents and worthy of her time. Because she's such a great counterpoint to Wim, where Wim wants to go on a crazy adventure, but once he actually gets out there past the barrier, he's scared, and he's surrounded by all these pirates and deadly droids, and he's frightened. He wants to go home. And Fern is this counterpoint where she's so brave. She's like, even though she's a little kid, she's a badass. And they have such a great dynamic of just like, complete opposites, but strangely endeared to each other. I've been absolutely loving it. It's such a breath of fresh air after like The Acolyte and Ahsoka, where I kind of felt like I was forcing myself to watch it every week because I wasn't really that into them. This is like, I'm so excited for every Wednesday when the new episodes are up. I've been loving it. I hope this one gets renewed for a season 2 because I just love this cast. These kids are so great, and like, I want to continue this adventure with them. And I'm not ready. I don't want it to just be 8 episodes. This is too good of a show to end after 8 episodes. Someone great. This was, I saw a list of Millie Bobby Brown's top 10 favorite films, and people were kind of making fun of it because they're all pretty recent. They're almost all of them from like the last few years. But first of all, she's a kid. She's what is she, 19 or 20? So of course she's gonna like recent movies. So the favorite film isn't gonna be Shane, And they were all great films. I was looking down this list, and I'd seen 9 out of 10 of them, and I'd loved all 9 of them. So I was like, well, we obviously have similar taste. Well, I'll watch the 10th one I haven't seen, and that was Someone Great on Netflix. Gina Rodriguez breaks up with her boyfriend, played by Lakeith Stanfield, because she's moving, and she wants to have like one last great day with her friends. And I thought it was great. It's a really like feel-good little comedy, but with real feels as well. Like, it's very funny, but the emotions and the friendships all feel very real, and it really digs into like how hard it is to get over a breakup. You've been with someone a few years, and you don't really know what life is like without them, but now you've broken up, you have to figure out what life is like without them. I really enjoyed it. Something in the Water. This one was a bit more disappointing. I remember seeing trailers for it earlier this year. It was in cinemas. It's like a little British film, I think. The trailers made it look like, it's a bunch of women on a bride and her bridesmaids are at a destination wedding, and like the day before the wedding, they hire a boat and go out to this island in the middle of nowhere. And they end up getting attacked by a hungry shark. And, based on the trailers and based on that premise, I was expecting like a tongue-in-cheek comedy. I was expecting like Bridesmaids meets Jaws, which would have been fucking amazing. That sounds great. And it's not really that. It takes itself way more seriously than you'd think. And it's like a melodrama. And like the opening scene is... 2 of these bridesmaids are like holding hands and they're on a date, they're walking out, and they get stopped by this like group of thugs who are making homophobic remarks and stuff, and one of them kind of like, stands up to them and starts talking back to them, and they grab the other one, throw her down the stairs and beat the shit out of her. And I'm watching it like, fuck, this is so real and scary. What happened to Bridesmaids meets Jaws? What the fuck? And then it's months later, she's recovering from her injuries, and she's got the Mind app that helps you deal with anxiety, because she's having lots of panic attacks because she's got PTSD from this attack. And then I start thinking, oh, okay, the shark is going to be a metaphor for anxiety and trauma. And it kind of is, once it gets into that, and everyone's getting picked off one by one, eventually it's just her and the shark, So it is like she's in the middle of this ocean alone with her trauma. But it just didn't really work. It kind of lost me by then. The characters are all so thinly drawn and so one-dimensional that I don't really care when they start getting killed. It's like, this one's the bitch and this one's the pushover. And just everyone had their, it was like the screenwriter had index cards for each character, and each one had one word on to describe who the character is. That's how thin the characters were. And even the shark attack scenes weren't that exciting. That's what you come to it for. That's why you're watching Something in the Water or Deep Blue Sea, or I would recommend watching Open Water. So if you want to watch a movie that masquerades as a shark movie but turns out to be like this melodramatic character study, Open Water does that a million times better. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. This was fucking fantastic. I missed it when it came out, and it finally came to Netflix recently, and I watched it, and I liked the first Puss in Boots movie. I like that it's kind of a swashbuckling adventure with Puss in Boots. It's, Even though, Puss in Boots isn't exactly my favorite Shrek character. I'd rather see a donkey movie. And I believe actually now they are doing a donkey movie. But I actually really liked Puss in Boots in this. I thought he was really funny, and Antonio Banderas was really funny. And he has, a more dramatic arc as well, because he's spent his 9 lives. So this time, now if he dies, he's going to die for real. And it starts giving him anxiety, and he's having panic attacks. And I related to that. My anxiety's been really bad recently. I've actually just been put on medication for it. So I related to Puss in Boots in this, more than I ever have in previous films. And he has, Salma Hayek is back as, I think her name is Kitty Softpaws, his love interest, and Guillermo from What We Do in the Shadows. I can't remember the actor's name, but he's wonderful in this as he plays like an emotional sport dog who becomes like Puss's best friend. He's hilarious in it and so sweet and adorable. And it was a great cast. Florence Pugh was Goldilocks, and I think like Olivia Colman was the Mama Bear, and they're like a crime syndicate. And John Mulaney was the bad guy, big Jack Horner, little Jack Horner all grown up. He was hilarious in it, as always. And the animation was stunning. It wasn't like the standard DreamWorks, glossy, realistic-looking animation. It was like more, stylized Spider-Verse type animation. I love that there's been this revolution of animated films after the Spider-Verse films that get a bit more experimental, a bit more stylish with their animation, because Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem did the same thing. And it's just much more interesting to watch than just the standard typical animation style. 80 for Brady. I loved this movie. This was wonderful. I kind of just threw it on, it was a great cast. It's Lily Tomlin, Jane Fonda, Rita Moreno, and Sally Field all play these like old ladies who love Tom Brady, and they love the New England Patriots. And Lily Tomlin's got like cancer, or she's had cancer and she's been in remission, and now the cancer's back, and she just wants to have one nice experience with her friends. So they embark on this road trip to go and see Tom Brady in the Super Bowl, and it just becomes this delightful road movie of these friends, and they're all so funny and so great, and they all have great chemistry, and they're all screen legends, and so funny. And it's wholesome. It's like there's a whole running joke that Sally Field has like a fanny pack, and she thinks it's called a strap-on. So she's at breakfast in the hotel, and they give her the Super Bowl tickets to hold on to, and she's like, "Good thing I got my strap on." And everyone's looking at her. It's honestly a really funny movie. I wasn't expecting it to enjoy it as much as I did. Thought it'd be worth a couple of chuckles, but I really enjoyed it. It was a delight. Dune Prophecy. I watched this 6 episodes, I think. And it was all right, the bar's been set very fucking high by Denis Villeneuve's films. And this is like, in those films, there's so many characters that those films have made you care about, with Paul and Chani and Stilgar and the Fremen, and this TV show is like 10,000 years before the birth of Paul Atreides, so it's so far removed from anything you already care about in Dune. And that would have been fine if they'd had like a great story and great characters, as great as the films. But it doesn't really. There was one episode I really liked, where I think it was episode 4, I want to say, it was kind of like a standalone, Romeo and Juliet star-crossed lovers storyline with a romance between an Atreides and a Harkonnen, this kind of forbidden romance between the two warring houses. And that was great. I actually know the guy who played the Atreides. He was his name's Milo Callahan. He went to my school. I think he was like a year below me. And he was great in it. I remember my friend telling me a few months ago he'd seen him in a Doctor Who, and I looked up his IMDb. He's going to be starring in a TV version of The Rainmaker, and he's playing the Matt Damon role, which is pretty cool. He had great chemistry with his co-star, the Harkonnen woman, who I don't know. She didn't go to my school. But yeah, that was a great, just little standalone story in the Dune universe. Maybe this should have been an anthology series. Each episode focuses on a different character, a different story somewhere in the Duneverse. Because the ongoing storylines, like the virus in the Bene Gesserit school, Desmond Hart, who is Desmond Hart, what is Desmond Hart, I just didn't really care that much, So it's been renewed for a season 2. I'll probably watch it, especially if it's only 6 episodes again. That's not much of a commitment. I can do that. But I was not that impressed by Dune Prophecy. But again, it's, it's the bar has been set very high by Mr. Villeneuve. And the other thing was kind of interesting. It's kind of like Game of Thrones in the Dune universe. you know, because you got these tensions between the houses and lots of sex that you know, lots of sex that you don't really get in the movie versions because they're like PG-13, whereas this is HBO. There's going to be lots of sex, and it was just weird to see in this sci-fi universe, like, they go clubbing and take drugs, and the drug isn't even spice. So, I don't know. I'll check out season 2, but season 1 it hasn't exactly lit me on fire. Arrested Development. I mentioned last month I've kind of been having a bout of insomnia, and I've been sleeping much better recently. I've been getting, like, you know, 5 or 6 hours a night intermittently. I still haven't had a nice, unbroken, full 8-hour night of sleep. But, you know, last month I wasn't sleeping at all, so this is certainly an improvement. But I've been going to bed much earlier than usual, so I can't just lie in bed and watch movies all night as I normally would. So what I've been doing this month is kind of, you know, watch a couple of Arrested Developments before bed. You know, it's been a couple of months since I watched it, and it's such a densely packed show. There's so many different jokes and so many things. You know, I've probably seen it 100 times, and I still pick up new jokes every time I rewatch it. Certainly those first 3 seasons. And the cast are so incredible, like Will Arnett as Job, and David Cross as Tobias, Jessica Walter as Lucille, you know, and those are like the wacky comic personalities. Even like Jason Bateman as Michael Bluth makes me laugh so hard, and he's the straight man, he's the voice of reason, he's the foil, the deadpan foil. But it's something, I don't know, Jason Bateman's just like the ultimate straight man. The way he plays off, you know, his deadpan reactions are as funny as anything crazy Tobias or Lucille or Job are doing. And that's an art. I think the straight man is such a thankless job. And Michael Bluth might be the greatest straight man in the history of comedy. Red One. Like many people, I completely skipped Red One when it was in cinemas and watched it when it came to Prime instead. I didn't find it to be terrible. You know, I saw it labeled as like one of the worst movies ever made, or, you know, a complete piece of shit. And it's not great. I mean, it is soulless corporate product. It is, you know, it's The Rock playing The Rock, and all the emotional payoffs are completely unearned, you know. And it's so many cliche things, like Chris Evans has got to get to his estranged son's recital, and if he makes it to the recital and he watches his son's recital, his son will know he loves him after all. That's like every other Christmas film. And, you know, Dwayne Johnson's going to retire as Santa's bodyguard, and by the end it's like, you know what, I think I'm going to stick around. It's just all these things that are completely predictable, and they're not earned at all, you know. Like, Dwayne Johnson and Chris Evans becoming friends, and Dwayne Johnson coming around to think Chris Evans isn't such a bad guy after all. It's apropos of nothing. It's just, we're in Act 2 now, so that needs to happen, you know, per the Blake Snyder model. It's, but, you know, having said that, I was entertained. I quite enjoyed it. I'm finding I really like Chris Evans in comedic roles. I thought he was really funny in Deadpool, and he's really funny in this. So yeah, I can't recommend it, but it's not the worst thing in the world. You know, got a few chuckles out of me. Carry On. There's a new Netflix original. Taron Egerton as a TSA agent who's held captive by a terrorist. Jason Bateman, he's been hired to like get a nerve agent onto a plane by a terrorist, and so he's sort of like forcing Taron Egerton's hand to let this bag through with this nerve agent in. And you know, it's been compared to Die Hard because Taron Egerton's sort of this everyman hero, and it's set on Christmas or around Christmas. But I found it to be much more like Collateral, where it's this interesting kind of cat and mouse two-hander, where it's actually almost a like-for-like remake, because in Collateral you've got Jamie Foxx as a cab driver, and Tom Cruise as a hitman who's got him driving around all night from hit to hit. And Tom Cruise is this cold-blooded psychopath who's like needling him the whole time and figuring out his weaknesses, and you know, he's unfulfilled as a cab driver and he wants to start a limo business, but he doesn't have the motivation, so Tom Cruise is going to give him the motivation by making him think he's going to die. And Jason Bateman does the exact same thing to Taron Egerton. He's unfulfilled in his job as a TSA agent, and he failed out of the police academy, but he's never tried again. And Jason Bateman is going to needle away at that weakness to exploit him, but also it's going to push him to become a cop. And but I enjoyed it. They were fantastic in it, Taron Egerton and Jason Bateman. I love Jason Bateman in villainous roles as well. You know, he was so funny as the deadpan foil in Arrested Development, but seeing him do a darker role like this or in Ozark, he's great at that too. And, you know, Carry On, there's so many implausibilities and plot holes and contrivances and things you have to sort of overlook. But, you know, I don't really care about that. If the performances are there, and the dynamic of hero and villain is there. So I don't mind ignoring some plot holes. No Good Deed. This was a great show. Great new show on Netflix. Like 8 episodes, half-hour episodes. Ray Romano and Lisa Kudrow are trying to sell their house, and they're harboring these. It's insinuated they're harboring these dark secrets, and some dark shit happened in the house. And Ray Romano's estranged brother, Dennis Leary, gets out of prison and comes after them for some money, and it just kind of keeps escalating from there. Like the potential buyers of the house sort of get intertwined in their lives, and it's just a great dark comedy. It's from the writer of Dead to Me, which I've never seen, but I love this so much I'm going to go back and watch that now. And it's a great cast. Obviously, Ray Romano, Lisa Kudrow, Dennis Leary are all great, but like Abby Jacobson is in it, and Luke Wilson and Linda Cardellini play a married couple, and they're hilarious in it. Tiona Paris from The Marvels is in it. It's a really great show. Compulsive watching, I found it to be. Each episode is this nice zippy half hour, and each one kind of ends on a cliffhanger or ends with a big twist, and you want to see what happens next. You watch the next one. It's a very, very binge-worthy show. The description of it on Netflix, where it's like a couple's for sale sign invites families into their home. Sounds lame, but it's much better than that makes it sound. Cowboy Bebop. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but, classic anime from the 90s about bounty hunters in space. Because at the Game Awards, Naughty Dog, which is my favorite studio, my favorite video game makers, debuted the trailer for their new game, Intergalactic: The Heretic Prophet, which looks amazing, and it's about, you play as a bounty hunter in space. And in kind of announcing what the game was, Neil Druckmann's sort of worn his influences on his sleeve and kind of said, heavily influenced by Akira and Cowboy Bebop. And I've seen Akira, and I love Akira. I'd never seen Cowboy Bebop. I didn't even know what it was, but it's like this show. It went for one season, and it's about bounty hunters in space. This ragtag group of bounty hunters kind of come together one by one over the course of the first few episodes, and they just go across the universe picking up bounties. And it's a fantastic show. I can't believe I slept on it for so long. It's iconic. It's not some hidden, undiscovered gem I've found. It's a huge, huge hit with a huge audience. But I can't believe I'd never watched it. It's fantastic, and the visuals are incredible, and the world building, and the characters are so lovable, They all have a very interesting dynamic once the group's all together, and just the aesthetic of it, like that it's futuristic sci-fi meets an old school western. I fucking love it. I love that shit. And I read that there was a movie in the works years and years ago, like 20 years ago, where Keanu Reeves would play Spike, and now I'm just pissed that doesn't exist. I wish, when I get to the end of the show, I wish I could go and watch that movie, but they never made it. Shrek the Third. All the Shreks came to Prime, and my sister was watching them one by one, and unlucky for me, she watched 1 and 2, when I wasn't there, and then when I went around to visit, they were watching Shrek the Third, the first of the crappy ones. I think third is the worst. The fourth one isn't as great as the first two, but it's better than the third. Justin Timberlake as Arthur is very annoying. It's the whole thing hinges on, we love this kid and we want him to be king, but I don't. Every time he wants to just turn back and go back to school, I'm like, let him go, Shrek. He's dragging the whole dynamic down. You've got Shrek, Donkey, and Puss in Boots, and then Artie is just sucking all the fun out of the room, not as good as Shrek 1 or 2. How the Grinch Stole Christmas. This was on Netflix. I stuck it on, the one with Jim Carrey. It's a great telling of the story. Obviously, he's great as the Grinch. It's a great performance. But the thing that always impresses me watching it is like the practical effects, like the set design, the production design. Whoville is this real, tangible place. If they were doing it today, they'd put Jim Carrey in the volume. He wouldn't even be wearing a suit, which probably would be better because he hated wearing the suit. But they just put ping pong balls on his face and CGI the green fur and CGI Whoville around him, but you wouldn't get the sense of space. You wouldn't, it's the Ron Howard old school practical version is so immersive, like it's this tangible, living, breathing place. It's very impressive. Seinfeld. Been rewatching Seinfeld from the beginning, and it's just such a good show. What can I say at this point? I think it's come up on a couple of these videos now, because probably about once a year I'll go back and rewatch all of Seinfeld. And this was the show that kind of like made a big impression on me as a kid, because my understanding of how comedy works, comedy storytelling was like, you tell a story and the characters say funny things and do funny things. But Seinfeld is like, the way you tell the story can be funny too. You can have these ironic twists, and you can dovetail the two storylines together, and they clash into each other in really interesting ways. And It's just like maybe the best writing of any sitcom, because it's the plotting is so, the sequencing of scenes is funny, you know, the fact that this happens and then this happens, but then this happens, it's ingenious, you know, and the dialogue is very witty, and they are saying funny things along the way. It's like just jam-packed with laughs, and it's, you know, the only sitcom really, apart from Larry David's other show, Curb, you know, it's never concerned with making you feel for the characters. It's never concerned with having a dramatic storyline. It's just funny. It's just the comedy. It's just terrible people doing terrible things and getting their comeuppance. It's, you know, it's gold, Jerry. The Office. Rewatched The Office. Again, there's another one that kind of about once a year I'll go back and just, there's another one. What more can I say? It's fantastic. Steve Carell as Michael Scott. It's one of the great performances of all time. And usually I stop after he leaves, but this time I kind of kept going. And I'm like halfway through season 8. I don't think I'll continue with it, because season 9 it really goes downhill. Season 9 it becomes a cartoon, and it's just, you know, a shell of its former self. It's not the relatable show about working in a mundane office. It's like Looney Tunes at an office. It's ridiculous. But season 8 had some good stuff. I think Robert California is a hilarious character. You know, James Spader is so great at playing into being the creep, but being funny at it. You know, it was Michael Scott's absence can definitely be felt, but it's still The Office. It's not like season 9, it's not even The Office anymore, but it still is in season 8. National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation was one of the family favorites that we put on every year. I don't think we did last year, but this year we watched it on Christmas Eve, and I love it because it's not, you know, a lot of Christmas films are about Santa, you know, something magical happens, whereas this is just, you know, family tries to celebrate Christmas, things go horribly wrong, and I love this franchise. I love Chevy Chase's Clark Griswold as this kind of like the dorky suburban dad who is pushed to his limit and loses his shit and goes on a rampage. He's great in that role, and it's so funny. And it's just, there's so much good stuff in it. You know, the whole thing with the rivalry with the neighbors, and like the tree goes up in flames and the turkey is all dry, and Cousin Eddie shows up. He's absolutely hilarious in it. Randy Quaid as Cousin Eddie. Just like the worst house guest you can imagine, the biggest imposition you can imagine. I think it's great. It might be my favorite Christmas film. You know, I know it's not objectively the best. I didn't rank it as number 1 when I did a top 5 Christmas films video last year. But I put it on there, and I think it's my personal favorite. Daddy's Home 2. There's another one we love, which, you know, when the first one came out, first Daddy's Home came out, I was like 17, my sister was like 14, and me and her and my dad had all seen the trailer and thought it looked really naff. But my mom was like, no, I think it looks funny, let's go and watch it. And so we kind of begrudgingly all went with her to watch it and adored it. We thought it was so funny and so sweet, and such a great cast and a great story, and you know, it got eviscerated by critics, but we loved it. And then, you know, 2 years later the sequel came out, and suddenly we couldn't wait to all go and watch it. And there's like one Christmas scene in the first one, but this is more overtly a Christmas film. That's why we watched the sequel on Christmas Eve. And this is where Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg's dads come into the mix. And Mark Wahlberg's dad is played by Mel Gibson, and Will Ferrell's dad is played by John Lithgow. And the casting is perfect, and their chemistry with each other's dads is perfect. And you know, it's another one that got absolutely eviscerated by the critics, but we love it, you know? It's good, wholesome family fun, and it's really funny. The kids are so funny, and it gets a little bit sappy, a little bit schmaltzy towards the end, but I can forgive that. It's a Christmas film. It's a big budget, star-studded Christmas film. Of course it's going to get sappy at the end. And I think the actors make it work. They commit to the schmaltz, you know? I think it's fantastic. I can't believe it's been like 7 years. They haven't done a Daddy's Home 3. Where is it? I want to see it. Toy Story 3. This was on, I think, BBC One on Christmas Day. And I had it on while I was waiting for everyone else to get ready. And just such a masterpiece. They shouldn't have done a fourth one. The fourth one's fine, but the third one was such a perfect ending. And just a perfect movie all round. And it made Toy Story one of the greatest trilogies ever made. Then they did a fourth, and now they're doing a fifth, and they just, you know, they've diluted it now. Because 4 was a really good movie. I'm sure 5 will be as well, but it's undone. Toy Story 3 is like on its own level, and they'll never be able to top that as an ending. Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul was the new Wallace and Gromit film on, I think it was also on BBC One, but we watched it on iPlayer a little later. It was on quite early. So good. Feathers McGraw comes back for Vengeance. he like hacks into Wallace's new robot gnome, Norbot, and they were creepy as hell, the Norbots, when they turned evil. You know, I mean, I was scared of them, and my sister was terrified of them. I can't imagine like an actual little kid watching this, but it was fantastic. It's, you know, Wallace and Gromit's one of those rare franchises that has never missed, and you know, that continues to be the case, because this was fucking great. It's like so funny, so clever, you know, the writing is really tight, and there's a lot of great twists and turns along the way, and at its core, it's really about Wallace and Gromit's relationship, and how Wallace needs Gromit and loves him, and he's his best friend, and, you know, that's really touching. It was fantastic. And the new voice of Wallace, because Peter Sallis has sadly passed away, they have had to recast the role of Wallace. Seamless transition, you know, it's like the new Rick and Morty. You don't even notice it after a while. It feels like it's the exact same. A Quiet Place. This was on Christmas night, not the most Christmassy viewing, but really, really well-made horror film. There's a couple of things, you know, like when the kid gets killed at the beginning, he's asking for it. They've took the toy off him, they've took the batteries out, and they've said, you can't have this. And not only does he grab the toy, he grabs the batteries, he puts the batteries back in, he makes a noise, he gets himself fucking killed. The kid's a liability, frankly. The family are much better off with him dead, I've got to say. As hot, because that was, you know, watching it in the cinema, not knowing that was going to happen, that was a huge shocking moment. And, you know, the tragedy of it really landed, and the fact that it's like still weighing on this family, and the daughter feels like, because she gave the kid his toy back, that John Krasinski blames her for his death, and that becomes kind of like the emotional core of the film, and that all landed for me the first time. But the second time, I'm like, this fucking kid had every chance to not get himself killed, and he still got himself killed. I know he's a little kid, so you shouldn't really blame him. But they couldn't have made it clearer. Don't put the fucking batteries in the fucking toy and make a fucking noise, because you'll fucking die, you little shit. And he still goes and does it anyway. But even like this kid who's a total liability, they've got him walking at the back of the line. You know, John Krasinski and Emily Blunt away at the front. Shouldn't you have one adult at the front, one adult at the back? Because John Krasinski's got to run like 200 feet to get back to this kid. And of course the alien has snatched him up by then. And there was a lot of things that stuck out to me. I think this is the second time I've watched this, since I must have not seen it since the cinema, because it didn't really stand out to me then. But the whole running thing of there's a nail sticking out of the step in the basement. You know, when I watched that the first time, it's like this cool thing of like, when's someone going to step on it, and will it be the worst possible time? And it is, you know, and then it eventually does happen. As I think Emily Blunt's going into labor, so like it is the worst possible time she could step on this nail. But it's like, why is there a nail sticking out of the step? And why in 400 days or whatever it's been has no one noticed there's a nail sticking out of the step? Or if they have, why haven't they done anything about it? I don't know. It's a very, very well-made film, and the tension is there, you know, and you believe that that this is a real family, and the emotions are all there. But there's a couple of things like that really stuck out to me watching it a second time. Casablanca. I hadn't seen this in years, but it came on, I think, Boxing Day, and you know, Casablanca doesn't need me saying nice things about it, because it's widely regarded to be the greatest film ever made, or one of them. But it is this kind of perfect storm of old Hollywood, of the studio system, and, you know, actors are under contract making 10 films a year, banging out whatever scripts are available. This was an unproduced play, you know, they're just grabbing books and whatever material they can get to keep churning out films, and but this one happened to be the perfect pairing of actors with Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman, that they have this just electric on-screen dynamic, and the perfect material, because it's this story of an American expat in you know, World War II in Morocco, and the story of like resistance against the Nazis. And it was 1942, it was right at the height of World War II, and, you know, it was just the perfect story, the perfect time, the perfect actors to tell it, the perfect director with Michael Curtiz, and you know, the perfect movie, perfect ending. It's just, you know, for that era of filmmaking and the way the studios were doing it back then, Casablanca's like the absolute pinnacle. Paddington 1, there was the show in, I think this again was the BBC 1 or maybe BBC 2 on Boxing Day, and I'd kind of forgotten how great the first one was, because the second one was so amazing that, like, my memories of Paddington are all of the second film, where he's in prison and all the stuff, Hugh Grant, you know, but the first one's fucking great too, and it's got, you know, in the second one, he's already part of the Brown family, where this is like, he ingratiates himself with the Browns, and they come around to loving him, even though they're skeptical initially, or the dad is anyway, and you know, it's this really sweet story of the outsider comes in and is embraced by a new family and finds a new home and a sense of community, you know, and that's all really beautiful just as a story. But it's so hilarious as well, and Ben Whishaw's so lovable in this role. He's so great at, like, you know, making Paddington adorable but also like really, really funny. It's just, you know, Paddington 2 is a perfect movie, but Paddington 1 is a fucking perfect movie too. Matilda, speaking of perfect movies, this was, you know, it's a perfect adaptation of the Roald Dahl book, and I love how dark it is, how dark the humor is for a kid's film. The performances are all so iconic. Like, Mara Wilson obviously is incredible as Matilda, and is kind of like Macaulay Culkin, where she's this little kid who just like has so much star power and so much charisma and depth in her performance. And, you know, she's surrounded by these absolutely horrible people. You know, Pam Ferris as Miss Trunchbull is so, like, she's so evil and so hateable, but, like, you love watching her as well because it's a great character, a great performance. And the same with Danny DeVito and Rhea Perlman as Matilda's horrible parents. They're so funny, but they're so horrible. And it's a great fucking movie. Dear Santa, I just watched this on Paramount Plus, because I love the premise of it when it was announced a few months ago, and you know, it's the Farrelly brothers, and they're great, and it's one of those ideas you hear and you can't believe no one thought to do it before, where this kid with dyslexia is writing his letter to Santa, and he misspells it Satan, so his letter to Santa goes to Satan, and then Satan, played by Jack Black, shows up and offers him 3 wishes in exchange for his soul, and it becomes this like weird buddy comedy between this lonely, nerdy little boy and the devil. And, you know, it got really negative reviews, so that's why I didn't watch it sooner. But I thought, you know, I gotta check it out, because I love that premise, I love the Farrelly brothers, I love Jack Black. Even if it's a terrible film where you get to see Jack Black play the devil, it's gonna be worth it. I actually really enjoyed it, you know, the ending is a jarring shift, where it suddenly is very uplifting and very heartwarming, and it feels like a weird shift, and maybe the studio said we need a warmer ending, because it doesn't really fit with the rest of the film. The rest of the film's been very dark and cynical, even though it's, you know, it's suitable for kids, just about, but it's there's a lot of dark stuff in it. I had a lot of fun with it, you know. It could have been funnier, whatever, but just Jack Black playing the devil and having so much fun playing the devil, it's infectious. You get swept up in his fun, and you have fun too. And the kid starring in it, Robert Timothy Smith, I didn't realize until afterwards. I saw his name in the credits, and then I saw his name in the credits of Skeleton Crew, of the new Skeleton Crew, that I put 2 and 2 together. Like, this kid playing Liam in Dear Santa is Neil from Skeleton Crew, and I hadn't connected it yet, but he's amazing in both of them. I mean, what a year he's had, you know, where he plays both of them as like just unabashedly timid and meek and geeky and kind of like losers, but also like the underdog, like the loser you want to root for to pick themselves up and not be a loser kind of thing. And that's mean to say because he's a kid, but they're fictional characters, and he's acting. But yeah, he was fantastic, and his kind of on-screen dynamic with Jack Black, they had like a fun back and forth, and you know, where I was saying at Red 1, all the emotional payoffs were unearned. In this one, it felt earned, like when Jack Black says to him at the end, like, you know, kid, I've enjoyed hanging out with you and getting to know you. You buy it, you believe it, that feels earned. But yeah, I enjoyed Dear Santa much more than the reviews had made me think I would. So yeah, everything I watched in December, and now it's 2025, crazy. Got some fun stuff coming up this year. James Gunn's Superman, The Last of Us Season 2, 28 years later. Paul Thomas Anderson has a new film out this year, as yet untitled. A new Avatar, Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning, new Fantastic Four. So yeah, there's a lot to look forward to in the coming year, so Happy New Year, and I'll speak to you at the end of January. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you liked the video. Remember to like and subscribe and click on the little bell. And also seize the day and call your mom and be kind to yourself.